I am really excited to meet Mark Russell, Chief Executive of the Children's Society. Mark, thank you very much for joining me on Leaders in Focus.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We met in a really extraordinary fashion very, very quickly. We threw ourselves sort of in the deep end. Do you want to just sort of tell us how that happened?
Yeah, well, you've got a friend called Angus who's part of our team who connected us and then tried to persuade you that having me come and talk at one of your events was a good idea. And then, having never met me, you let me loose to speak in front of hundreds of your clients at your big Boyden National Assembly, just before an astronaut zoomed in from the International Space Station. So it was a pretty cool way to meet.
Yeah, we sort of took everyone on a roller coaster, which was obviously we're going to talk a lot about the Children's Society and what you're trying to achieve. And then we beamed ourselves upstairs to see somebody from the ISS and then back down for a choir, which was pretty cool. We're going to talk about your organisation. We're going to talk about your journey. We're going to talk about some of the challenges that you faced as a leader. But I think maybe just set the scene on, for those that don't know, what is the Children's Society and the sort of large-scale statement about what it is you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, well, we've been around for about 140 years. We're one of the largest children's charities in the UK. And we are passionately committed to improving children's lives and so that every child gets the best possible start in life. We're working with around 75,000 of the most disadvantaged children in the country, supporting them with their mental health, supporting kids in poverty, kids at risk of exploitation and harm and county lines, kids facing abuse. But our big ambition is that last year we reported that British children are the most unhappy out of 27 countries in Europe. Our big ambition is to turn that around. We want British children to be happier and more hopeful and more optimistic and more resilient. And everything that we do as an organisation is focused on improving childhoods. So that at the moment, British kids are getting a rough ride. We want to change that. I
couldn't believe, I remember when we started having the conversation about the organisation, and I didn't know about you. I couldn't believe the scale of it. And we're going to come back to talk about some of the challenges, because I really think there's an interesting conversation to be had around how you keep going. Resilience, everyone talks about that from a leadership point of view. Your road to Chief Executive, I always think it's an interesting one around whether it happened to you or whether you made it happen. Do you want to just talk a little bit through how you made it to your first CEO role and then onwards?
Sure. I grew up in Northern Ireland, which you probably pick up from my dulcet tones, and I grew up in the Troubles in a very difficult period in Northern Ireland's history. And I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to go to university, get a law degree, and make a lot of money as a lawyer. And I had an experience at university that changed my life, which is that a gunman burst into a bar I was in and killed one of my classmates, which is the sort of thing that only can happen in Belfast back then. And I made a decision as a 20-year-old that I still stand by as a 50-year-old, which is if you want to change the world, you change the lives of children. Mm-hmm. And so I became a youth worker, working initially on the Peace Line in Northern Ireland with kids from Protestant and Catholic backgrounds. Then I moved to England as a youth worker. And I realized I wanted to do something on a slightly bigger scale. I was doing really good work with a group of young people, but I realized the challenges facing society were so much bigger. And I threw my hat in the ring to be a chief exec of a charity when I was 30 as a youth worker. To my astonishment, I got appointed and did that job for about 10 or 11 years, working with young people, working with homeless people, trying to bring about social justice and social change. But this is the job I've had my eye on for pretty much all my life. I've been a supporter and a campaigner and donor to this organisation for 20 years, and I desperately wanted this job and thankfully persuaded the trustees to hire me. Because I think as a chief executive, you have a remarkable opportunity to set culture, to set tone, to set direction and vision, and to really put your stamp of what matters to you onto an organisation. And so there's probably a wee bit of chance in there, and there's probably a wee bit of intention.
Do you get a sense of the sort of traits if you go? You have to rewind. We all have to rewind, don't we? Decades to go back to that early stage where we get into the beginnings of leadership. Were the traits that you were showing that led you to get the job?
I think so. I've always believed people fall into different groups. There are those who see a problem and hope somebody else fixes it, and there are those who want to roll their sleeves up and sort it out themselves. And so from quite a young age, I've always been seen as a leader, whether that's in youth groups I was in or at school, in being recognised in leadership roles. And I've really wanted to develop that skill inside of myself. But also I've never taken no for an answer. So as a kid, I wrote to John Major, who's the Prime Minister, and demanded to see him because people were being killed in my country. And I wrote him dozens and dozens and dozens of letters till he finally agreed to meet me. And at 16 years of age, I had a meeting with the Prime Minister talking about the issues Northern Ireland was struggling with. So I suppose it's that sort of dogged determination, tenacity that I just want to use my voice and use my energy to bring about some sort of change. And the third sector felt like a really good place to do that because it's all about social justice, it's all about change, it's all about using your voice to fight for a better world.
I think we grew up at very similar times. I was in Dublin and my father was a British Army officer, so we had some interesting challenges with my grandmother being in the north, writing to him as Major Patrick Robeson in the Republic. So, so yes, understand the strain and stress that that you would have had to have gone through on a daily basis. If we look at the Children's Society, you have 800 plus employees.
That's right.
You have 5,000 plus volunteers, I think, around the organisation.
Yeah.
There's lots of questions I could ask. One is the impact of national insurance on your business, which I think for the charity sector, and we might come back to that if we have time.
Yeah.
The other is just to focus on the problem.
Yeah.
Because I actually think that's more important. You have a huge mountain to climb, and it almost feels like the mountain's getting bigger every day that goes by.
Yes.
How do you focus on steering 840 people to gain some degree, millimetre by millimetre progress on one of the biggest challenges this country faces?
That's a phenomenal question. I mean, I think just to paint the context of the challenge, I've worked with children and young people for 30 years, and I've never known it this hard. We've got 4.5 million children in this country living in poverty. That's one child in three in poverty in this country. We've got over 2 million on waiting lists for support for their mental health. We've got 1 million children who don't have enough food to eat. We've got 1 million kids who live in insecure homes. And we've got 1 million children at risk of exploitation, harm, or abuse. So the scale of the challenge is immense. So as a leader, I suppose my job is to help work out what is the Children's Society's unique contribution into that, and how do we make a difference, and to continue to inspire our team to believe that every action they take, every day they show up at work, we're attacking that huge problem. And what we're trying to do in this organisation is work with as many young people as we possibly can. So we've increased our footprint from around 12,000 young people to over 70,000 young people over the time I've been in this job. But the purpose of that is, yes, to change those 70,000 kids' lives, but is to use the data and the evidence and the voice of those young people to use the organisation as a megaphone to shout to government, to shout to Parliament that we've got to turn this around. We've got to change children's lives in this country. And so it's about charting what we believe is the unique Children's Society contribution into that, which is around, we believe, improving the well-being and the happiness and the mental health of kids in this country. So continually reminding our people of the scale of the challenge, the vision we have to address it, and how every action they're taking each day is making a difference. But, you know, there are changes. We can see changes happening. In the last couple of years, we've seen stuff improve because of the work we've done, which is really important, and to have a feedback loop back to the organisation to say, look, we fought for this, we've secured this, change will happen. That's really important. But frankly, the problem is enormous. And actually, part of my job is to continue to, that's why I'm so grateful to you giving me that opportunity, is to continue to talk to as many people as we possibly can about just how hard life is for kids in this country. And it shouldn't be like that. We're the 6th richest country in the world. So as a leader, I need to ask myself continually, what is it only I can do as the chief executive? So for me, that's about the tone. It's about culture setting. It's about continually reminding people of the vision. And it's also about ensuring that we celebrate success and honour those who make it happen.
And I mean, what was interesting about putting you out in front of an audience was the reaction was very positive, lots of engagement, and that was, you know, not necessarily at the event, but afterwards, people sort of wanting to step in to see how they could help. It struck me that we don't really know the problem. There's just isn't enough, and maybe it's just such a negative story that we turn ourselves off from it, and we see it as a sort of first world problem that we shouldn't have to be dealing with. But it seems that when you share your voice and you share the issue, people sort of suddenly, they almost act surprised. When you say 1 in 3, it's really 1 in 3. But 1 in 3 that's increasing, not decreasing. You've done some extraordinary things in terms of creating access. I came to your hub in Newham, which we opened. I think you're opening others around the country. So what's your mission around that? Why are you creating those centres for people to knock on the door, and what's the intent behind it?
If a child today is struggling with their mental health and they go to see their GP and the GP says, okay, we're going to get you some help, the average wait for a child in this country before they get that help is about 2 years. So for a 12-year-old, it's 14 before they get help. 14-year-old, it's 16. And during that period, their mental health continues to spiral out of control. All of the evidence and all of our work over decades shows the earlier you help a child with their mental health, the quicker we can change that, the better outcome for that young person. We transform a whole family, actually, and you save the taxpayer a pile of money along the way. You help children re-engage with school, and you help change their life forever. But in the absence of the NHS doing that, we decided as an organisation we wanted to step into that space, to create spaces. Over the last decade, the government have taken £1 billion out of frontline youth work in this country. Mm-hmm. And there are in many communities, no safe spaces for children once the school bell tolls at the end of the day. And in the absence of safe spaces, children find unsafe spaces, whether that's online or offline. So we've created this hub in Newham as a safe space where young people can just walk in off the street, get immediate help with their mental health. At the moment, it's helping about 1,000 children in that part of London and 300 parents. And we transform those families' lives. And we make sure they go back into school. They don't end up needing detailed, long-term psychological help or medication, and you improve their outcomes. The 19th century philosopher Frederick Douglass said it's better for society to build stronger children than fix broken adults, and I think he was right. So our vision as an organisation is to raise as much money as we possibly can and build a network of these hubs right around the country, and then build an irrefutable case that we can put in front of Wes Streeting and Rachel Reeves and say, if you put £1 billion into early help for mental health, not only will you produce a generation of happier children, who will then become happier adults, who will then be a better workforce for the future, but you save the taxpayer a pile of money in the NHS at the same time. Yeah.
And I mean, we don't have time to go into the impact on CAMHS around the country, and actually how I think the parents seeing their children connecting with your organisation actually just recognise the enormous value that you're providing. I want to come back to your leadership. I want to come back to, I guess, what you think you do well with the team that you've got and what they look for from you. I think I know, but I want to kind of get your sense of that. I think the sort of what you would keep doing, what you would wish to improve on, and then maybe anything that you think, God, I really wish, I should have discarded doing that, but I'm still doing it. Things that sort of maybe get in the way of your performance. So I guess, what is it that you think you're doing that your team relies on, that trait that your team relies on you for day in, day out?
I think there's a couple of things that I think I bring to this organisation as a chief executive. One is the sense of purpose and the North Star that I've wanted for myself and for the whole organisation. And the North Star is clear. We want happier kids in this country by 2030. So that's the North Star, I guess. There's a deep sense of loyalty to my team around the country. I believe that we can only achieve what we want to achieve with a motivated, inspired team who feel loved and cared for and valued. And so I work really hard at investing in my immediate team around me, but also the wider organisation as well. We celebrate success. I write lots of cards to people. I make lots of phone calls. I visit loads of people. It's really important to be out and about. So it's that sort of personal seeing and believing as a chief executive, rather than just me being an email name on an email or a face on a website, but somebody people have met and know. I do all our welcome sessions for all our new staff, so they get to meet me pretty early on. So that's one piece of it. The other is around, I suppose, the sense that I want to release in all of the people around me their best selves. I want them to look back on their time in the Children's Society as the period where they did the best work of their career. We want them to feel inspired. We want them to have the right toolkit that they need for their job. We want them to make sure we're paying people properly, looking after people, and we want to make sure that they have a voice and they feel their voice is heard in the organisation, so that they're part of a big team that works to change children's lives and that they're not done to. That's sort of piece is what I think I bring. What I can improve on, I suppose, Oh gosh, loads. I've just had my annual appraisal this morning, so I've got some feedback that I can reflect on.
I mean, you can share that with us if you want.
Well,
but,
I think for me, and I think anyone who's watching this in any kind of leadership role, it's making sure that the urgent doesn't crowd out the important. Mm-hmm. So your stuff can hit your inbox, and in this job, serious stuff can hit your inbox around the safeguarding of children or a complex HR issue or whatever it is. But actually, we always have to ask, what's the important? What is it I need to be doing with my time? Where are the big strategic calls that we need to be making? And I probably could do better at making sure that the urgent doesn't crowd out the important. I probably as well could say that I need to look probably better at my work-life balance. And because I believe so passionately in what I do, I probably work too many hours. And I'm conscious if I don't get that modelling right, then I'm setting a bad example. So I need to probably do better at that. And that means taking more holiday too.
One of your colleagues, I can't remember, said something about you having 30 hours in your day rather than 24 hours in theirs. It seems somehow you seem to expand the availability of time in a day. This may be hard to answer, but maybe you touched on at the beginning, that kind of the drive behind you is it's so obvious, it's visceral, you can kind of almost feel it. Is it back to that moment where somebody in your class was killed, or is that what is the constant driver for you?
That was the first driver for me. I think today the driver is, I believe every child deserves the best start in life. It shouldn't depend on their postcode or their parents' income or how many GCSEs they've got. I believe every child deserves the best start in life, and they should be free from harm and abuse and have a decent home and people who love them and have enough food to eat and heat in their radiator. That's my drive, is that I think we're failing children in this country, failing them. Yeah. And it was Nelson Mandela who said the measure of the soul of a society is how it treats its children. And frankly, in Britain, we're doing a terrible job. It can't be right. Out of 27 countries in Europe, British children are at the bottom of the league in terms of well-being and happiness. It can't be right that 1 in 3 live in poverty. It can't be right in one of the richest countries in the world. So my driver is, I am restless. I suppose far as say I'm restlessly angry that life is too hard for too many children. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is an overwhelming desire to change that. But I had the privilege of showing the late, great Desmond Tutu around a homeless project a number of years ago in my last job. And he said that what was really important was organisations like ours were fishing drowning people out of rivers. But actually the really important job is to go upstream and stop them falling into that river or being pushed in. And so the other part of my driver is an overwhelming conviction that this organisation needs to be upstream as well and affecting change and persuading politicians that we need to do better.
But everything from the conversations that we've had, I mean, you've changed bills, you've impacted rapidly at government level change that should come down the river to help children.
Yes.
We're going to run out of time because this is what happens. Time goes very quickly. I think it's a question for me around the ask. So somebody's listening to this, we're going to put links on for them to find out more about the Children's Society. But if I am looking at your organisation, I'm listening to this podcast, what is your ask?
There are a number of asks, I suppose, but I'll keep it to 2. The first thing is to say thank you to you for giving me this opportunity to talk in front of your audience and in front of your audience at that event as well. Because it's only because of people like you that we can get our message out to people and share what we're doing. My ask would be, find out more about the Children's Society. Go to our website, look us up, see some of the work that we do. That's the first thing. And secondly, if you're in a position to support us, to do so. We've got to raise about 40 odd million pounds a year to keep this show on the road. And I want to get that number up because the more pounds that I can raise, the more children's lives we can impact. And you mentioned national insurance. That was a £750,000 hit I wasn't expecting this year on my budget. My trustees have enabled us to find a way through that. But costs are going up, as everyone who's watching this knows. Every cost is going up. So if you're able to support us and help us raise the money we need, we can change more children's lives. And this organisation is respected by the government. It's respected by the Prime Minister. We're in the door in Downing Street. We're going to use our voice to fight for that big change that children need and deserve. And the support of anybody watching this can help us make an even bigger impact.
Brilliant. And anybody that is watching this, Mark, whether it's public or private sector, you're one of the more inspirational CEOs that I've had the privilege to meet. So keep at it. And I hope that you can continue to shift the needle in the positive direction for children in the UK.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.